All right, hi everyone. We are looking at our next part with our transformations unit here. We're going back to the quadratic function and the square root function, but this time, instead of looking at the inside of the parentheses, we're looking at the outside, which is the plus k here, or whatever is outside those parentheses being added or subtracted. So like before, we have our original graph over here on the left. And we have, the new graph over here on the right. Now, we haven't changed the shape of the graph. We're still looking at the quadratic, that parabola, the U shape. We still are going to be talking about those 5 main points here to help us get that value. But this time, because of the plus k that's outside of our graph, outside of that set of parentheses, this time, notice what happened to those 5 points. They're no longer on the x-axis anymore. All 5 of them have just been shifted up. So this time, outsiders are not going to lie to us. Outsiders are truthful. So if we are outside of those groups of parentheses, outsiders are honest. So if we see a plus, we will in fact move up. Okay, if we see a plus, we will in fact move up. So let's see what happens to our original if we bring in our next equation here. All right, so let's get those again, those same 5 dots to help us draw that U shape. This time we have a plus 2 outside of the parentheses. So that means for our graph, it's going to be truthful. So our numbers are growing, our numbers are going up. So then our graph will also move up. So we're going to move up 2 units. We're going to take all 5 of these dots, all 5 of your original dots, and shift them up 5 squares. So I'm sorry, 2 squares. So let's see what happens here. All right, here's our original, our 5 main points. Each of them gets shifted up 2 squares to make that same similar U shape. So this time, outside of the parentheses, we're shifting upwards. Now, if we have a minus, like we do on our next part, minus k this time, let's see what happens with the minus. So here's our 5 original points. And let's get our new 5 points up here. So this time, check out what happened to those 5. They didn't shift up, they didn't shift right, they didn't shift left. This time they moved downwards. Because again, outsiders are honest. Okay, our outsiders are honest. So we are shifting downwards this time if there is a minus. So outsiders are honest because we shifted down. We shifted down. So let's see how that might look in an equation. All right, so let's get your original 5 dots. There's our original looking parabola. And we're going to take all 5 of these, and according to our equation that says minus 2 there, this time, because outsiders are honest, sorry guys, looks like my pen is dying here a little bit. This time we move down, and because of the minus, we're moving down 2 units. So if I put our original 5 points so we can see how they move, we're going to take all 5 of these dots, shift them down 2 units. And we get our new graph for this parabola. So there's our final for that one. Now let's see if the same thing is going to hold true if we go to our square root function. Because like before, the original parent function of a square root is still living inside this function. There's our x inside the square root. But this time, like before, we're just dealing with what's happening outside of the square root value. So again, we're looking at outsiders. So let's see what happens if we are adding something to the outside of our graph. And you could guess here that it is going to be the same thing as it was for the quadratic. A plus outside of those parentheses is still going to shift up because your outsiders are honest. So a plus outside of that square root or outside of the parentheses is still going to move up. So let's see what happens to our function here. All right, so we have our original one. Just a little off the grid here, but that's okay. So this time, outside of that square root is a plus 2. So we're going to take all 5 of those points and now shift them up 2 units. So we're going to take a look at and put a few of our original points up here, because again, the grid is kind of small here, but we're going to shift all of them up 2 squares. So move up 2. So count for each of these dots, 2 squares up. And there's our original. And now I have enough room to get the rest of my dots on here to make my new graph. All right, let's check out our last one. Let's see what happens now with the minus. And you could have guessed here that if you have a minus k, like the original square root, a minus is going to shift your dots down, just like it did for the quadratic. So this time a minus does in fact shift down, because like before, outsiders are honest. And let's see how that might look in an equation. All right, so I'm going to get our original up here. And again, I'm just going to squeeze in the ones that I can. It's okay if they're a little off the grid. Just kind of estimate where those 2 should be. So there's our original. And this time, like the equation says, get rid of these extra little dots here. X minus 2. And that minus 2 is outside of the parentheses, which means we are going to move down 2 units. So if I draw the original points that I can fit in here, and again, the last one goes just a little off the grid, we're going to shift all 5 of these just down 2. All right, and there's our final graph. All right, so remember, guys, you could have a combination of these different pieces. We could have an equation that has something like y equals, in the parentheses, we have x plus 1 squared minus 2, which would in fact be a combination of your moves. Just remember, if you're looking at the inside, insiders lie, which would mean plus really means we go to the left, so left 2 units. Outsiders tell the truth, Outsiders are honest, which would mean minus really does in fact mean we're going down. Sorry, that shouldn't be left 2, it should be left 1. Sorry about that. But we could have a combination of the two. So it's just a matter of what's going on in the parentheses or inside the square root, what's going on outside the parentheses or outside the square root. All right, guys, I hope you learned something about what happens with that H and K and how the plus and minus can affect or move around your graph. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions you might have. Thanks, guys.